Welcome to the Talkin Tabletop Podcast, a collection of tabletop thoughts from a growing community of board gamers. And I'm your host, Ryan, from the Mista Rau Gaming YouTube channel. Hello, everybody, once again to the Talkin Tabletop Podcast. I am your host, Ryan, from Mista Rau Gaming. And we've got a little bit of a shorter episode this week, and that is okay. Lots of the content creators and folks that we are invited to be part of this program and project here just got a little too busy this time around. It is a very busy time of year for a lot of folks with a lot of different things, and that is okay. We are still going to have an amazing episode. We still got a couple content creators that are willing to share their tabletop thoughts this time around. We've got Alex McKenzie once again from Meeple and the Moose, and of course community member Tyler Lance is here to share his thoughts as well. And it has been, at the time of this recording, it's been my birthday weekend. So happy birthday to Mista Rau Gaming. We are obviously in April here celebrating 2 years of Mista Rau Gaming. And I have been having wonderful times. An absolute blast doing content creation here, and I love doing this little side project. It just brings me a little bit extra joy and just kind of just like a little bit different, keeps me on my toes type of content. Well, folks, let's sit back and relax and enjoy the episode. If you're here to hear just one particular content creator, you may as well just stick around for them all, because they are all so amazing and oh so wise around the tabletop gaming industry here. All right, well, I will see you at the end of the episode. Enjoy, everybody.
Hello, my name is Alex, and I write board game reviews over at meepleandthemoose.com, and I'm here to contribute to the Talkin Tabletop Podcast. As board gamers, we're all acquainted with the idea of a shelf of shame, or shelf of opportunity if you're looking to put a positive spin on your pile of unplayed games. But I recently found myself thinking about my shelf of dust. The games that I own that have gone the longest since I've last played them, and yet they've survived multiple rounds of culling, selling, and trading. What are these games that are just gathering dust to my shelf, and what are the qualities that keep me from moving these games out of my house? I think first I want to examine why I usually move a game out of my collection. The primary reason for me to move a game on is space. I have a game closet, and the agreement with my partner is that I keep all my games in that one closet. Now, it's full, but definitely not bursting. But if I want to acquire a stack of new games, I need to make room for them. The second reason I move a game away is for money. If I can sell a game, I turn around and use that cash to buy a new board game. And I love getting new to me games. I recently sold Massive Darkness, which I had last played in 2018 for $150, and I used that cash to buy Castles of Mankin Ludwig, the Royal Collector's Edition. A worthwhile trade in my opinion. The third reason I move games out of my collection usually comes down to the fact that I'm just not playing those games anymore. Games that I feel like I've played enough, and I'm not likely to be pushing my game group to revisit. It gets to boot. I'm lucky that I haven't had to reacquire any of the games I've gotten rid of yet, but I feel like I have a pretty good handle on the games I want to get rid of. So, what are my dusty games, and why have I kept them around? Some games are just so small that I literally have no reason to move them along. The Castles of Burgundy, the card game, was last played on August 5th, 2016, but the box is less than the size of paperback book, and I'm not exactly going to be reclaiming a lot of space. There's no real point in getting rid of it, but if I'm not playing it, there's also no reason to keep it, right? Other games are fairly precious to me because they were influential in my origin as a board gamer. Forbidden Desert, last played on October 6, 2018, was the first cooperative game that my wife and I got really invested in. We have a ton of co-op games now, but every time I consider which games I want to get rid of, I look at that metal tin and immediately think, nope, not that one, moving on. And some games are games that I'd really love to play more, but my current game group just doesn't allow for it. Games like TAC, last played December 24th, 2018, and Le Havre, the Inland Port, last played June 12th, 2020, are because I've pretty well stopped playing 2-player games. I used to play 2-player games a ton with my wife, but since our kids were born, we've both generally been just too tired in the evening to play a game against each other. Now, recording this segment has encouraged me to pull a few more games off my shelf and just put them up for sale. Games that I know I'm never going to be playing again, like The Settlers of Catan, Apples to Apples, and Codenames Harry Potter. There is a really great value in keeping a well-curated collection. More choices isn't always better, and if you're not going to play your games, getting them out of your space gives you more room to maneuver. You'll feel less stressed when you look at your packed shelves if they're precariously stacked and crammed into every square inch. Less stress means you're more encouraged to go to your games and pull one off the shelf. What are the games in your collection that have sat dormant the longest, and what's kept you from moving them out of your collection to make room for new games? Please reach out to me on social media on bluesky@meepleandthemoose.com or email me at meepleandthemoose@gmail.com. I'm genuinely curious as to which games have sat dormant for you the longest and what is keeping them in your collection. That's all from me this week. If you want to read more of my board game reviews, you can find them over on my blog, meepleandthemoose.com, and have a happy Thursday.
Hey everyone, it's Tyler Lance back again on the Talkin Tabletop Podcast, and excited to talk about a new topic that is one that can be relatable to all game groups or any sort of game nights that you are attending. That is deciding who leads, who's teaching games, who's bringing the games. How do you figure out what games you are playing? There's always that dilemma of trying to figure out who's going to teach, who's going to bring the games, and how they're going to be played, or who's going to play them. So my group specifically has, I think, found that right spot within our dilemma where we can figure out who's leading the group and on what week. As meet up every Monday, and I think we've hit that sweet spot. And for us, the number one way that I've found works really well is having a rotation of people that will teach or lead. Now, sometimes they may not be able to attend the group. They may not have a new game to lead, and they may just get passed up for that week and can be revisited later on. And that's okay. It's something that's going to happen. Not everyone is able to make a game night every single week, even though I'm sure everyone would like to. It's one of those things that I personally enjoy, and I'm fortunate that my neighbor is the host of game night. But it's one that it's that way to connect, have some fun with those that you enjoy to spend time with, and have that group camaraderie, whether it's a competitive or cooperative game. And in that rotation, for our group, it consists of about 5 or 6 different people, and just work down a list. And if, say, I'm up next and I'm able to make game night, I'll pick a game depending on the player count. If we have 6 people showing up that night, our group consists of maybe up to 8 to 10 people on a good week. And if we have 2 different tables of games, someone else, Ryan, will teach the game that week, or whoever's up on that list, and we'll work through and figure out, okay, is this going to fit with the table space that we have? And we'll communicate with each other to make sure that each of us are able to teach the games that we want to on that given week. And it's a good way to not only always play someone's games, the same person's games every single week, but it's also that way to continue to get, maybe you every 3 weeks you get a new game that comes in. It's board gamers, we like to get new games. We see that new hot thing that's out there, or one that we haven't played in a while that's on a discount. You grab it, you really want to play it, you can't play it alone. It's that way to get that game to the table, but not have to wonder when I can do so, because your name's going to come up in the rotation in a set amount of time, and it's going to be that great way to do so. Now, that may not work for everyone, though, and there's two other ways that as I was thinking about this topic that able to kind of think through and maybe find as valid options. And this, it can depend on the settings of the group. It can depend on the people within the group and their preferences as well. And that's why the second, number two, is voting on a game. You got that group text thread, you have the group message thread, whatever platform resource you're using, you have that way to communicate. Well, okay, I'm kind of thinking of playing some Carcassonne, or I'm thinking of playing some Castles of Burgundy. You can have that then vote within the group to say, all right, yeah, I want to play Castles of Burgundy this week. And you got a few others that follow with, or you get a mixed bag of stuff. And, well, turns out we have enough for 2 tables to play both Carcassonne and Castles of Burgundy. So it works out perfectly. Sometimes others, it can cause a little bit of back and forth within the group. Well, I really want to play this game. Well, we played your game last week, so I think we're going to go with Castles of Burgundy. It's one of those that this is more of a difficult option, but one that I personally prefer as over the last option that I'll be going over in a second, because I kind of like to have an idea of what game is going to be played before going to game night. It's one of those, maybe you like to read up on the rules a little bit, have a little bit of an idea of how to play the game, maybe not develop a strategy right away, but make it easier on those that are teaching the games so there isn't as difficult of a teach, no matter if it's a light game or it's a very heavy game that will be played that night. So voting is that second option depending on the type of game that you are playing. So and how your group is within that type of interaction. Now, the third option is one that is more for a situational thing and type of game night that you may have. And it applies to me pretty well because one of my game nights is on the second Friday of every single month. And there's about anywhere from 30 to 50 people that may show up on a given month. And it's tough to say who's going to be there, what type of games they enjoy, and what maybe game that they want to play, because maybe they brought games as well. So the third option is a free-for-all. And the free-for-all may not be the best option, but in a situation like that where you just kind of show up and you talk through the group and you say, okay, well, we'll play Carcassonne first, but then we're going to move over to Castles of Burgundy afterwards. Or we're going to play some of the Crew afterwards and do it maybe a lighter, like Trick Taker. Have some fun, relax a little bit. And the free-for-all is not a bad option by any means, but it's one that may be more difficult on a person that is trying to teach the game, because you're going there, oh yeah, well, Tyler's going to bring diamonds and the Crew, but well, I don't know if it's going to be played, so I don't know if I want to read up on it. You may not be able to check on the rules. You may not be able to do what you may if you know what the game is before going into the night itself. So it's a tough balance on the free-for-all, because it's pretty tough to say, okay, we're going to go to this group of people that are 30 to 50 folks that are going to play games, but I don't know what's going to be played, so we have to kind of keep it up in the air. Or you don't know what table space is going to be available. So it's one of those that you have to find that right balance and have an open mind going into it, that may not be able to play the games that you want to play, but it's an option that has to be there because of the situation that you're in. So I want to hear what your group does. Is our group has relied for quite some time on the rotation of those that want to lead board games and teach them throughout the group, and it's worked well for us. But it's this list of 3. It doesn't mean that that's all that there is as a valid option or what has worked well for other groups. So I want to hear what your thoughts are and what's worked well for your group to get that right balance of who is playing games and what games are being played. So look forward to hopefully hearing some of those options that you have and that have worked well for you. But until next time, We'll see you.
Hey folks, Ryan here from Mista Rau Gaming, and welcome to my segment on this week's Talking Tabletop Podcast. Thank you once again, Alex and Tyler, for your awesome contributions this week. Can't do this show without you folks. All right, well, what has been happening in Mista Rau Gaming land? Well, at the time of this recording, this past weekend was my birthday. Yeah, so that means some games got played, and a couple of those games I'd like to talk about. One of them was we did get in a good game of Blood Rage. Yes, the classic. Well, can I call it a classic at this point? I'm going to start calling it a classic at this point. Eric Lang, Dudes on a Map from Come On Games, because I guess that's how they would like you to pronounce it. This was the first one in his trilogy of big miniatures on big maps with lots of expansions and content and stuff. But this one, I don't know, Blood Rage seems to stand the test of time for me. That must mean that there is something pretty darn special about this one that, I don't know, I'm drawn to Blood Rage more than Ankh and more than Rising Sun. And I'm going to try to share my thought on why that is. One thing is there were a few new players to the game this weekend, and we were able to teach them this game with actually relative ease. Now, they are not brand new gamers into the hobby. They play quite a bit of games. They can grasp games quite quickly, but I always feel like, you know, these big dudes on a map type game, there is quite a bit of rules overhead. But in this case, Blood Rage doesn't have a whole heck of a lot of massive rules overhead. There's really only just the few actions. There's only about 5 or 6 actions that you're actually taking on your turn, and it's relatively simple to take those particular actions. So the difficult part about teaching the game was kind of like the card draft. What are all the different types of cards that you're going to see in the game? What are those synergies in those cards? How can I use, there was a number of times when people would be looking at their cards and be like, I don't really see how that card could work. So they ended up passing it off in the draft where somebody else may have drafted it, like myself. And I actually was utilizing the card that they had passed me, that they were talking about, and I was actually relatively effectively able to use that particular card. And they're like, oh, okay, I see that now. So there's kind of like those nuances in like how are some of these things being played out. And it's the positioning too, the strategic depth that actually can happen in this game. Where do I put my guy? Where do I invade my guys? What territories do I go to? Where am I going? When's the right time to pillage? When's the right time to play down a quest? All of those types of things. Do I draft a monster and put it out even though he's expensive? A lot of little nuanced things. But overall, the gameplay experience is smooth, or at least what I find is smooth. We get going into a game and things just kind of started rolling. Your turns are actually relatively short, unless if you got a little bit of analysis paralysis of, oh gosh, am I going to pillage this turn? Do I march my guys across the map type thing? Do I just put out another guy on the map because I've got that little bit of leftover rage at the end? So many wonderful things. I was, not doing, I don't think I was doing terrible at one point, but I did not, I definitely misstepped a few times. Even though this is my favorite game, I rarely win at it. But that doesn't matter because this game always provides some great experience. Like we had a great battle for Yggdrasil right in the middle of the map that almost caused a player to do a table flip at some point in time. I wanted to flip the table because I thought I had positioned myself pretty okay at the end of the game, when all of a sudden a player triggered a pillage that I didn't think that they were actually going to trigger, and I ended up I didn't want to lose the battle. No, gosh, no. And I ended up losing it by 1 combat point, which ended up being a very, very significant cost in points for myself because I lost that particular battle. And that's the way that this game can go, and it is awesome. Always love a great game of Blood Rage. That was one of the games that I got to play on my birthday weekend. The other one is a game that I am still surprised about, because it's a game that I didn't think that was actually going to work in my brain, like how it's described and how it's just everything about it. But then it all comes together in a nice, neat little package for a very enjoyable experience. And that is Last Light, designed by Roy Kennedy and published by Grey Fox Games. You know, when they tout that a game is going to take, some of my other favorite games of all time, like Eclipse and Twilight Imperium 4th Edition, but we're going to boil it down into a much quicker experience, still kind of scratch that itch of that 4X style, maybe not the true 4X, but it's kind of like that 4X style of game. I was very hesitant at first, though I was very intrigued because I'm very much a sucker for space-themed board games. I managed to play this a few times at Dice Tower West. I managed to play it a few times before then. And then finally we got my copy. I realized that every copy that I've always played already has not been my copy, but I finally got my copy played on my birthday weekend. And we had a fantastic time playing this game with the rules teach, and us then going about playing through the game was only still like It was under 2 hours. It was the end of the evening. They wanted to kind of still want more kind of big game, so we brought out Last Light, and still it was under 2 hours with the teach and the rules explanation going on, and we still had a really fantastic time. Again, much akin to the Blood Rage. I kind of saw a little bit of this after we played it back to back, that there was very much that simplicity in your turns. There's not a whole heck of a lot going on your turn, but it's the strategic depth of when do I do things. I've really found out that that's kind of like the theme of the 2 games that I chose for my birthday weekend, was the actions themselves aren't overly complex, but it's the when do I do things. For in Last Light, you have a hand of 6, is it 6? Yeah, 6 action cards that you're going to be playing down during your turn, and you pretty much just do what the action is going to be. Is it going to be you're going to construct a bunch of ships? Are you going to mine the planets that you have extractors on for resources? Are you going to, what's the other ones? Trade? Are you going to trade? Are you going to research for some more technologies to upgrade your kind of like your system and the way that you kind of like your engine that you're kind of building? Or are you going to eventually, I play down enough cards, am I going to play down my refresh cards so I can get all of my stuff back? The order that you do these actions in matters tremendously, especially after everybody's played what's called their refresh card, because then that triggers this whole big board rotation. Who was once your neighbor is now no longer your neighbor. Now the guy across the table from you is now your neighbor, because the solar system's kind of turning. There's this actual physical component where you actually turn the board. So that your positions are completely different amongst each other. That's something so really, really cool. And it's a little bit different because it's not like a full out extermination style game. It's still, you're trying to get some victory points, which they call light in this game. And it's a race. Whoever can collect 20 light first is going to be the one that manages to win the game. So we had a really awesome 4-player game of this, and I was in a great position about halfway, even 3/4 through the game. Had a good engine going, churning out some light every time that I played down some of my refresh cards. I was kind of controlling the center of the board, and then there was just a couple turns in a row where my opponents just absolutely decimated my fleet on me, and I was a little bad luck on dice rolls, a little bad luck on my defense, but hey, that's just the way my ships were not as well equipped as their ships were, so they just kind of came in and snafu'd me. But again, it was I didn't actually lose all by that much. I still ended up with 18 out of the 20 light before our friend at the table managed to grab 20 light on his refresh turn. Overall, you know what? This is just a game. Last Light is one that keeps surprising me on how well and how efficient this game is. My one friend at the table here kept getting blown away by, oh gosh, it's the next turn already. Like we all did our things, because many of the actions in the game can be performed simultaneously. There's only a couple actions that actually really super matter when you actually have to do it in turn order. Otherwise, you can just play out everything just as is. Everybody plays down their cards, everybody kind of announces what they're doing, and then you just kind of just take your actions. The only one that actually really matters is what they refer to as the command action. That's the big one. That's the one that allows you to move your units and then eventually attack with your units as well. Last Light, Grey Fox Games, Roy Kennedy. It's a huge smash success. I can't wait for the new alien races to come out from the second Game Found campaign that they had launched. Really, really great game. It was a really solid evening of games for my birthday, which was Blood Rage and Last Light. One last thing I would like to highlight from that weekend was that my family and I, mostly my older son and I, we managed to work our way through the Unlock kids games. Now, if you're not familiar with what Unlock is, it's kind of like an escape room style of game where you are going to be solving puzzles and riddles in order to kind of achieve some sort of overarching goal of the story that is at hand. And they have a really clever way of, you solving your puzzles and how you kind of connect items and cards together. It's very card based. And the Unlock games have an app with them. The kids game does not contain an app. Rather not, it's kind of like, you have to interact with your components to kind of create these kind of like, each component kind of gives you like a half of a symbol, and you're kind of matching up two halves to create like a full symbol. And then there's a little reference chart. If you can find that full symbol on this reference chart, it'll tell you what's the next card you need to draw out of the deck, or which component you need to punch out of the punch board. And it's really kind of cool and it's very thematic. I'll just give you an example. I don't want to spoil anything for it if anybody wants to try these out at some point in time. But what you kind of end up doing is that maybe on a card there will be a door, and maybe one of the components you have had is a key. Well, and maybe another component you have is a axe. Well, there is actually two combinations you could do. You can actually try to use the key in the door, so you'd actually match up the symbols on the door and the key to see if that maybe opens the door, or maybe if that doesn't work, and I match up the symbols, it's on the chart, but then I go to find that card, it gives me a big red X. Maybe I need to do something different. Well, maybe I grab the axe, and I do the axe with the door, and all of a sudden, that one worked because you smashed down the door type thing. You got a lot of really cool little interactions like that, and it's always very thematic. The stories are absolutely adorable and cute. And I must say though that it was the ones that they touted as the hardest, quote unquote hardest levels, were the ones that we found the most enjoyable. They actually had they had the best puzzles in the whole set. The other ones that were kind of like the quote unquote easier ones were kind of, I think they did what they needed to do, was introduce you to the system and tell a really cute and adorable story to kind of get the kids hooked into it. So I would highly recommend, if you have young gamers in your house that are maybe between those ages of like 6 to maybe 9, maybe 10, if they're kind of sitting in that range, and you want to kind of introduce them to this style of like puzzle solving and logic, the Unlock Kids, fantastic. And once you're done with it, well, you're done with it. Maybe gift it off to somebody else, pass it on, because you've solved the puzzles. You aren't going to solve the puzzles again afterwards. The value in the box, there are 6 stories that you'll play through, and each story takes about, I don't know how, if I was timing us, probably about that 20, you're probably sitting down for about 20 minutes for a story. So you still get a decent amount of gameplay out of those little unlock boxes. Unlock Kids. And I think there's 2 boxes right now for them. So, and I believe that they've got plans to create some more. So take a look at those ones if you have got young gamers in your households. All right, well, I think that is about it for us this week. Thank you once again for joining us for the Talkin Tabletop Podcast. My name's Ryan from Mista Rau Gaming. You can find me on YouTube, just Mista Rau Gaming. And you also follow my gaming adventures over on my Instagram account. It's still just at Mista Rau Gaming. And I'm also semi-active on Blue Sky and on Threads and on Facebook. But I've really kind of picked up my engagement up on Instagram, where I've been kind of posting a lot of my stories as of late. But also, one of the places that I am the most active is on the Tabletop Express Discord channel. Definitely check out the show notes for a link to be invited into that Discord channel. They are a fantastic group with a fantastic community. If you haven't subscribed to their YouTube channel yet, please do so. They are just ever so close to 500 subscribers. Let's get them there. And I am going to be guesting on their network over the next little bit. They are doing their top 20 games of all time series, and I am very privileged and fortunate enough that they have invited me to participate in this series as well, so I could not say no for what is an awesome opportunity. So you will be able to keep your ears peeled to my YouTube channel and the Tabletop Express YouTube channel, because you'll hear about all of our top 20 games of all time. All right. Well, I think that just may be a wrap on this week's episode. Please join us once again in 2 weeks' time for another episode of the Talkin Tabletop Podcast. I'm Ryan, and as always, thanks for listening, y'all. Cheers.